We're going to spend about $11.5 million in the general fund on pension-related expenses.
Right.
Put it in perspective, we have a $67 million general fund. That's about 15% of our entire budget in one line item,
right.
Pension. If you go back four years ago, it was around $7 million. And so each year, it's gone up on average over the last 4 years, about $1 million a year.
Right.
It's a $4 million increase.
So how are you going to make that shortfall up?
The $4.4 million, how we're going to make a structured balanced budget on that one is twofold. One, we're going to be using one-time reserves.
There's the LEAF funds.
We have the LEAF fund that stands for Local Economic Augmentation Fund. City Council developed that fund back in 2001 during the previous housing boom, in
right.
which our revenues were exceeding our expenditures, which is a good thing. When that happened, the City Council shifted those revenues and they put it into a LEAF fund, otherwise known as a rainy day fund, knowing that there was going to be a downfall in the economy one of these days. And when the downfall happens, they can go towards that fund and use that money to bridge the financial gap in the general fund until we get out of the recession.
So how much of that fund you got left?
Right now we have about $6.5 million left.
Okay.
The problem is that we anticipate using about 2.6 next year to plug the hole, and then another 2.6 the following year to plug the hole. That leaves us about $1 million for fiscal year 18-19.
Right.
So that's one part of the equation to fill the $4.4 million hole. The other half is using what we term expenditure savings. This is the first time the city's ever had to resort to use expenditure savings in order to balance the budget.
So what's that mean?
That means that, case in point, we have a $67 million appropriation authority. In other words, expenditures, projected expenditures next year being $67 million as authorized by the City Council. Expenditure savings comes in by at the end of the year. You didn't spend $67 million, you only spent $65 million. So you theoretically saved $2 million of what you were previously going to spend.
Okay.
The expenditure savings we're hoping for this next year is going to be about $1.8 million. So you get the $2.6 million in one-time reserves. We're going to come in at 1.8 million, no, 2.6, 1.8 million
right.
in the savings. That gets you to the 4.4. So
Go
the
ahead.
second part of your question, well, how do you get the 1.8?
Right, yeah.
Basically, it's salary savings. When you have positions that individuals either retire or they leave city service, you don't fill their job for a while
right.
until you have expenditure savings.
So, and you believe that you've tracked the employees you have now, that you think that through attrition you'll be able to save that money?
Historically, we have never been fully staffed. The last time we were fully staffed was back in about 2005, 2006,
right.
over 10 years ago. We always have vacancies in one department or another. There are multiple vacancies, and hats off to our human resources staff. We do a good job in filling those vacancies, but it takes time because we're a public agency, so we have to advertise for the job, and then we have to set up oral boards. And then once we get the oral boards and we interview everybody, we do a second set of interviews. And then once we narrow it down to a top candidate, then we go through a background stage. And depending on the level of the employee, it could be an exhaustive background stage. If it's a police or firefighter, you want to make sure that you have a very good employee.
Yeah,
so
of course.
It could take upwards to a month and a half by itself just for the background.
So is there a plan B or a parachute if those attrition savings don't happen?
The plan B would be basically hold the line in request departments, not spend all of their appropriation authority,
okay.
Come in under budget by, say, 5%, rather than spending 100% of their budget. We have done that before. We've made edicts out of this office that have said, we're in a recession, we need to tighten our belt, you need to come in 5% under budget. You need to come in 7% under budget. We did that back in the 90s. We did that probably about 5 or 6 years ago consistently, and we were able to do that.
The governor just dropped his budget on Monday, And he's been saying for a while that a recession is coming. We've talked about that in the past. And the big headlines out of his budget is that he's saving money to prepare for that recession coming. What's going to happen to us when we get when that hits California?
Yeah, I've long said for the last 6 to 8 months that a recession is right around the corner.
Right.
And I even mentioned that in the budget message. Historically, a recession happens every 5 to 7 years, ever since World War II. The last recession started in 2007. All indicators is that it ended in 2009. 5 years, 2014. 7 years, 2016. We're due.
Right.
And the governor has acknowledged that fact as well too. We have other mechanisms in place for in case we do hit a recession. In local government, especially here on the Central Coast, we're usually about 18 months behind. So when a recession hits, we feel it usually about 18 months later. And the reason why I say that is because of our primary revenue sources, sales tax and property tax.
Right.
If a housing market collapses, people are still paying the same property taxes they always did. Then they have to submit to the county recorder to reduce their property tax. And the tax assessors come out, they reduce it. By the time it goes on the roll, it's already a year and a half down the line.
Right.
And we get that property taxes already in. So that's why there's a lag on that one. Conversely, the same thing happens. Housing prices go up. We don't see that for at least 18 months to 2 years later.
So there's some reactionary time built in there.
It's a slower reactionary time.
Right.
So for us, it gives us an ability to adjust and start to react to the recession. It's kind of like a tsunami warning. We hear the earthquake,
Right.
we have the measurements, all indications are it's coming to us, but it's not going to hit us for a while.
Right.
We can start taking some precautionary measures to brace ourselves.
Batten down.
Correct. And how we do that is basically we freeze, we do a hiring freeze, no new positions. We go into possibly concession bargaining with our employee groups. We hunker down as far as all of our expenditures are concerned. We counsel travel and training. The list just goes on and on and on. We've been there. We've done that at least 3 times, 3 separate incidences in my career here in the city. I've done it in other cities before.
I'm Logan B. Anderson, and for more stories about city government, check out SantaMariaTimes.com or follow me on Twitter @Logan B. Anderson.